All right, thanks for joining us again. And it's still Crossfire with Dakwani Shoma. And we are back in the studio, and we'll be having a very good conversation this morning. We have a gentleman, who joined us in the course of the show. He's no other person but the convener of the Country First and so many other platforms. I mean, I remembered when he started writing about my one kobo. And I used to tell people, my one kobo, let me just lend you this very, simple bit of information. And now, where it is Country First, I belong to that platform. And trust me, all the time, I love to just go there and really, really see how passionate people have become about our country, Nigeria. And 2019 may be a very surprising year in the history of our democracy. Many things are beginning to get revealed and unveiled. And so people are wondering what is going to happen in 2019. I'll be talking to this gentleman and I'll be asking him also what is happening in 2019, maybe towards the end of the show, because we have a lot to discuss on the show this morning. He's no other person but Chris Wazobia Jr. He is the convener of the Country First platform, and we just discussed about Nigeria, that's all. Good to have you in our studio this morning. Good to have you. I just realized that your beards have outgrown mine, and you keep telling me lower it, bring it down, it's too much. But
there's some serious beard competition between the both of you.
I'm surprised that
I don't know how
mine is so very small compared to yours now.
An innate manure, if you like.
All right, Prof, good to have you on our platform today.
My pleasure.
Thank God it's Friday and it's Feedback Friday on Crossfire. And don't forget, what we basically do is to put those stories out there, and our commentator and we'll be taking commentaries, let me put it that way, on many of these stories, and to just get you really updated about so many things that is happening. Now, our first story this morning is really very interesting, and it has to do with SALAMI. He rejects the appointment as chairman of Corruption Cases Monitoring Committee. This was barely 1 month after he was appointed, and nothing has been said, even though information have it that is gone to actually, speak in some fora, and he explained to them very, very sincerely that he's not comfortable with some members of the committee. Peradventure, these are some of the reasons, or this form the basis of his rejection or rejecting this particular assignment and all of that. So we'll be talking really very much about that. And then again, the Federal Executive Council also submitted or made available a draft of the 2018 budget. And now this proposal was put together, and on Wednesday, it was actually seen and read and perused by members of the Federal Executive Council, and we'll be talking about that in details on the show today. Federal government recovers $85 million stolen fund from the UK, and this has to do with the Malabu oil deal. A lot of people have been mentioned to have one thing or the other to do with the Malabu oil deal, but we just found out that money has been recovered, how it was recovered, who paid it, how it came. Everything is just very shadowy. Maybe Prof will be able to enlighten us and throw more light on that, because I know former President Olusegun Obasanjo's name has been mentioned. I know the immediate outgone president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, has also been mentioned, but we haven't really heard how this money came by. But we know that, some of these monies have been brought back. Again, we'll be talking, about the case of Minor. Minor's case is really a very interesting one. Somebody came into the country, somebody already launched, a campaign, in Kaduna, for the position of a governor, and so many things are just happening at the same time, and we really don't know. Anyway, that's why we have Prof here this morning. Prof, let's take it one after the other. And I have some other stories that we talked about yesterday. We probably will take you there. Talking about the 17 governors that gathered, 17 minus 1, that gathered in Lagos State because the Imo State governor didn't send a representative and he was not present at that very particular meeting where a lot of issues were actually discussed, and they released a communique at the end of the meeting, which borders around everything that they discussed and all of that. We'll be talking about that also. And okay, let's just go on from here without wasting much time. People are waiting for Prof to start, updating us on some of these stories. Now, let's talk about Salami. Why do you think Salami rejected this position or this appointment as chairman of the Corruption Cases Monitoring Committee?
Dapo, if that came to you by surprise, it didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, I have studied the character, the nuances, and, if you like, the demeanor of Justice Salami. Interestingly, when his name was mentioned, I just said, with this, the way the fight against corruption is going, I am not sure this man will accept this appointment. Because for us who campaigned for the party in power, who began to profusely, if you like, profoundly, if you like, and prolifically criticize our dear president, I say writing profusely as early as 5 months into this administration, and people within the party and people who were close to me started challenging and talking to me. And I said, no, there are certain things that we're not doing right. And if it continues like this, a lot will go wrong. And the fight against corruption, you're calling him to supersede, to superintend the judicial protocols with respect to the fight against corruption. And then if you ask yourself deeply, can you define the fight against corruption? Where is he headed? How is he working? And if I quote my brother and friend in the Senate, Shehu Sani, who said that when it comes to fighting corruption in other sectors other than the executives, the presidency uses insecticides. And then when it comes to corruption within the National Assembly and other aspects, within the executive, it uses deodorant, And that's exactly where we are, where every so often you talk about the battle to diminish, accumulate the strength and the pangs and the effect of corruption on our society. All you hear, people pandering, all you hear is the mention of Jonathan's name ever and anon. And you ask yourself, are we living in the past or do we have a new watchman? If we do have a new watchman, why aren't you dealing with the issues fundamentally? And so I know that Justice Salami would, and then don't forget that when the names of those who were supposed to superintend and oversee this process was mentioned, we heard that a certain man who at the level of the Supreme Court of Nigeria was alleged to have misappropriated about 2.2 billion of Supreme Court monies was put in that committee as the secretary of the committee. And someone, when I put something up on my Facebook page, I threw a conjecture. Is corruption fighting back? Or do we have a festering boom of corruption? And someone took it up and said, well, I don't think corruption is fighting back. I think corruption is fighting corruption, And what we have on our hands is simply, like I said, predictable. I am not benumbed, befuddled, or bewildered as to what the learned Justice Salami has done. I think that his rejection of that appointment is a pointer to the presidency and those who will rather do propaganda than performance, that Nigerians are indeed watching with a sea of skepticism, a sea of doubt, a sea of, if you like, most of us who otherwise believed so deeply that this administration will fight corruption are watching with a wound and a hole in the heart.
But then beyond this, your skepticism and then the influences of the executive arm of government, because we have a lot of youth in the country who believe that just men should not just sit aside and watch things go wrong. At some point in time, just men must step into the arena and attempt to clean things and make the country grow. Now, if we have reputable individuals shunning away from heading some of these committees, shunning away from the judiciary here, how will the system become stronger? And how will the judiciary be able to effectively carry out their responsibilities and, if necessary, put in check the executive?
Strong questions, strong conjectures, but let me tell you this, that if from the start of a race you find out that you have titles, stones, and metals on the track, you will run the race.
If
you dare into the race, you got problems. You got
you
problems. You mess yourself up. And when you're programmed to fail, wisdom, according to Euripides, is to understand what is ahead of you and make wise conjectures and wise decisions. Euripides said that the man who does that, who makes profound decisions based on facts and figures, will not always end up in shame. And exactly that is what perhaps Justice Salami took one man to do. Study the programmatic, study the protocol, study what was in front of him, and then decide whether he can dare these waters. I think that I know where you're coming from, that evil triumphs because good men do nothing. But good men do not have to dance in hell to make it right. Good men will have to influence from outside if need be, and then perhaps seek political power, take the levels of power, and do what you have to do. You don't expect. My late father will always tell me that no matter how decent you are, if you decide to eat palm oil with your bare fingers, be ready to have the other soiled. And I do sincerely think that what we must begin to do as a people is like we're doing now, criticize what is happening. Unfortunately, we have spokespersons of government who will see every critic as an enemy. We have spokespersons of government who will call critics whalers. But I tell you, Ishoma, that all over the world, strong critics of rulership are indeed those who love leadership, who love governance, and who love their country.
Okay.
That's exactly what we must begin to do in this country. Understand that those who are critical of what is happening in governance are indeed patriots and those who love.
Shouldn't just find their way into power.
Yeah, Prof. I seems to have an opinion, and I'm going to share it with you.
You're right.
I feel that.
You're right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm beginning to think that resigning or rejecting this appointment may not have been the right step. And I'll give you one or two reasons. One is the fact that Justice Salami haven't identified that some members of this committee probably have cases of corruption hanging on them. I would have expected somebody of that, somebody of that personality to probably come open and say, see, this is what is happening. He consulted secretly by telling them 3 members of this committee, I can't work with them because blah, 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 blah. Couldn't Justice Salami just go ahead and then get to that point where these guys have been indicted, and then it brings them out and say, see, this is what,
from home.
and all of that. And then secondly, don't you think also that he is fighting government back in a way, trying to say that, okay, I was removed unjustly because he wasn't happy when he was taken out as the justice, of the appeal court, and he's been nursing, a particular kind of feeling against government.
Conjectures.
Yes, and you could have, yes, and maybe, no, I'm saying really and truly, yeah, because
you don't live inside of him.
Yes, I don't, but this may be. Because I remember there was a time when this government came into power. When this government came into power, people were... Yes.
Some humans do not nurse envy. Some humans do not nurse revenge.
Yep.
Some do not believe in revanchism. I've told people repeatedly, from my instance, some people have said that the reason I'm critical of government is that they didn't make me DG of NOA. Some have said because they didn't give me an appointment. That's very untrue. I have consistently written before this administration came, during when this president was sworn in, as early as 5 months before he got ministers, I have been critical. So if he hadn't appointed ministers, why did I start criticizing before he appointed ministers? Come on, it's about country first. And I have said repeatedly that I think that this country can work well and things can be done rightly. And that's exactly where I align with Justice Salami. You don't know how far, that's why I said it's conjectures. You don't know what he has done behind the scene. You don't even know whether he's gone back and making conjectures like you did. Whether he's gone back to Mr. President to say, 1, 2, 3, I don't think I can work with them with respect to this anti-corruption war and anti-corruption programmatic. Save and except you change them, perhaps we'll have problems from the start. And then you don't know what reception he got, you don't know what promises he's got, you don't know what assurances he got. And so when he decided not to, it becomes a major gift, not only to the presidency, but to the nation. It's a question mark on the conscience of Mr. President and on the protocol, the anti-corruption protocol. What will happen now is, it is left for Mr. President to look for another person who does indeed believe that he can fight for corruption, and then perhaps look at these other 3 names and see whether he has to take them away. It mustn't be, and that's where I have repeatedly said
what if Justice
regarding
Salami, what if Justice Salami himself have a case hanging somewhere about him? Because I remember
then
when
why,
the controversies...
Then why in the first place would Mr. President appoint him? I think that we have run, and we are running full circle as a country, where leadership is unable to look through, study deep, research. This country is a country of projected, a country of over 182 million persons. Great characters, great persons, men of credibility, men of integrity. Why is it that leadership is unable to seek out this man? If you ask me, I reel out names. Why is it difficult? Must it be around the same circle? Is leadership in Nigeria so short-sighted? Where are thinkers? In Plato's Republic, the great Plato said that philosophers should govern. And why did he opine that philosophers should govern? Because they have the power of sight, deep thinking, and the resilience.
And foresight also.
Resilience and foresight. And Dakbo, the sight of this administration is short. They don't see beyond those around them. They don't think deep about our country. They don't seek beyond propaganda. And that's why we're where we are. I think that if you feel, if you think that, oh, perhaps Salami would have the 1,001 Nigerians. That's why I sincerely think that the fight against corruption is lethargic and mediocre, because even the man who pretending over it, Magu, they have given us the impression that he's indispensable. Not even in God's kingdom are men indispensable.
But when you don't have a case with someone, or you have an absolute trust in the capacity or capability.
Cases,
no.
A hodgepodge of cases, a miscellany of cases, Magu, everywhere.
Allegations.
Everywhere.
Allegations and conjectures.
Must Caesar's
Allegations and conjectures.
Must Caesar's wife not be above board?
No.
Don't you have people with less baggages?
Don't you
have Nigerians with less baggages?
We're in a country that promotes and has enshrined, a rule of law.
No, but you have less baggages.
I believe
police
very
officers with less baggages. We have people in the military with less baggages.
You are not in the Nigerian police.
Also, every Nigerian has a monstrous truck of baggages. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
It's not impossible.
No, it is impossible.
It is not impossible. It is not impossible. Now, okay, another question is, why do you think this government have been very quiet on very obvious cases that ordinarily would, you would have expected the presidency. On the show yesterday, we're talking about the president and the presidency.
You just answered the question as to why Salami would refuse that appointment. You're just coming there now.
I am saying that somebody like from Ishaba's question, somebody like Justice, yes, Babashir Lawal, your case is still there.
Several cases.
Yeah.
And that boy, you know that for the first time in the history of our country, we have a new regime, a republic of orphan funds, monies without owners. Perhaps they grew wings from banks and then found themselves somewhere. It's only in Nigeria that we hear such things. And then our security agencies are unable to unmask.
Salami got a brief
owners.
before his name was announced. He got a brief before his name was announced.
But
and I'm surprised. I'm surprised that barely 1 month after, he's rejecting this appointment.
But
he was briefed that he was going to be made the chairman of this. I mean, he was going to get this appointment.
And then when he got the appointment,
yes,
and decided to do his search, that was anything wrong with human beings being fallible
anyway,
and correcting their error?
Let's move on. That's just one of our stories.
But that's just part of the problem we have in this country. So many people who are consistently defending the indefensible have this feeling that our dear president is infallible, so they must defend anything. But he's human. We're all human, Dakpo. We make mistakes. And the greatest thing about leadership is, according to Abraham Lincoln, the ability to understand that you're first human, the ability to understand that by reason of leadership, God has given you, or the system has given you the access to knowledge, both within and external, and then the ability to harness them and use them properly. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, leadership goes to bed after taking power, so it's unable to meet with those who are frontal, forthright, and those who will tell leadership the truth. That's exactly the problem we have. If Justice Salami has come to find out that, oh, if I go in here, I'm going to be in trouble, and I rather, if they're not correcting this, I'd rather stay away. I think it's nobler than just going in there.
We may come back to it.
I just need to quickly establish this or raise this question.
Is this still on Salami's case?
No,
we need to move on.
Not just Mr. Salami's case, but in Nigeria, in general. Now, Mr. President, because last week we had guests on the show who talked about how transparent and full of integrity the president is. But so far, we have seen a lot of issues happening within the executives. And so far, the president, in his state of goodwill and good character, we have not seen this individual sacked, removed from office. We have not seen so much spontaneous, push for delivery, quality delivery, and good governance. So can it be also said that the president's integrity here as an individual is not sufficient to grow the country as it should?
Ishama, let me say this, that I am one of those who are increasingly beginning to doubt the plenitude, the ambience, the latitude of the integrity of our dear president. And I say this advisedly. First, when the issue of MTN and his chief of staff came, nothing was said about it. 500 million, nothing was said about it. We came down to, until the Nigerian people, you remember that Babache Lawa was first of all, I don't know whether it's a family affair, let's take it from the old administration. The family affair programmatic, he was asked, they set up a certain committee that said there was nothing against him until the media and several people, some of us consistently lampooned everything that happened and repudiated that report. Then it was in January, February that Mr. President thought it right to suspend him. This is almost 10 months after. He's not been put to trial. He's not been effectively sacked. He's on suspension.
A report of what happened has been submitted to
my head is full. Let me tell you again. The certain monies was found in a building in Ikoyi, running into billions of naira, about $43 million. Okay, he's not been put to trial. We haven't seen anything about the report, and you're telling me about integrity. I have a problem with how we define some of these words. I think that the time has come for us to begin to ask our dear president to do what he must do, and do it quickly. I love the Christian scripture in a certain encounter between Jesus and Judas. He said that you have to do quickly. Whatever our president has to do to fix this fight against corruption, he must do quickly.
All right. We need to talk about what happened on the 23rd in Lagos. It is very phenomenal. And the southern governors come together in a meeting in Lagos, and with a commitment to having a united, indivisible Nigeria. And they came up with a couple of things. The summit also reiterated its belief in true federalism and devolution of powers. They talked about commitment for collaboration of one another and the growth and development of the Nigerian economy. The summit also emphasized priority on security of lives and property of its citizens. they were all together. They came and had this conversation. The outcome of this conversation, whether it is really to move Nigeria forward, we'll take comments on that when we come back from this short break. Join us again. All right, we're back, and thanks for staying with us. It's still Crossfire with Dakwani Sharma. We have Professor Chris Wazobia, Jr. in the studio. He's the convener of the Country First, and we've been discussing national matters. Now, on the 23rd, we had 16 governors. People, I mean, I don't want to make a story out of Rochas Okorocha not, present at the meeting and not sending a representative. Some other people were not there.
He had to stay back to watch the
Zuma statue erected.
To enjoy the scenery, yeah. A 500 something million naira statue, he has to stay and see
500 and something
good
million
looking it
naira.
is. Yeah, he has to stay
It
and
must
see.
be gold.
Yeah, Zuma now, his best friend, birds of the same plumage, they say, gravitate at the same troposphere.
And I know another translation of that says, birds of the same feather congregate together in the nearest proximity.
That's right.
So they have
so he had to. Zuma had gone home, so he has to stay to protect the statue.
Awesome.
And then see how his
Prof,
state fared.
what's your take?
Payment of salary.
You would have expected that a National Executive Council meeting would have been a very good platform where some of these issues would have been addressed. Not like, only APC governors will want to
Dakwa, don't reduce it. You're trying to reduce it. The party's governors have the right to meet and to decide on what they want to do. But you see what is important here is...
But these were not just APC governors.
Southern governors.
Yes.
And then, interestingly, that's exactly why I said the leader of the Progressive Governors Forum would rather stay, to protect the Zuma statue than come discuss serious national issues. But, that's Rochas for you. What is important here is that we cannot run away from the reality of now, that with what is happening across our country, with issues as to whether we must restructure or not, with governors in the North reaching out to their people to decide whether to side with the issues about restructuring or not, it was important and pertinent that the Southern governors met to take a position so that indeed the Nigerian state and the operators of our enterprise will understand where we're headed. And I did say initially, at some point when this call for restructuring began to gain decibel and strong effect, that Khalil will come handy. The inimitable words of Khalil. He said, falsehood on the throne, truth on the scaffold. That same truth sways the future. For behind the darkness unknown standeth God, keeping watch over his own. We're at that point in history where no matter how much people say, we don't need restructuring, we need restructuring of the mind, when the foundation is faulty, what the righteous must do is to rework the foundation. We're at that point where this country must be renegotiated. We're not saying that Nigeria should be broken up. My movement, Country First movement, is simply about the greatness of our country and how we can build a nation that is indiscriminate of our tribal, religious, ethnic, if you like, all the dichotomies that threaten our space and peace. But you know what? We cannot overlook them. That's what happened in the United States of America. That's what happened in Switzerland, where first, you remember that before America got independence, they had so many, what they call the Federalist Papers. And then after independence, they tried Confederacy. Then they had the American Civil War. And then settled for federalism. Switzerland, after 6 wars, settled for federalism. What we have in Nigeria is a lie. At best, it is a unitary system, and some of the operators of this enterprise are unwilling to tell themselves the truth. But it was Ustaz Uthman Danfodio who said in 1805 that conscience is an open wound Only truth can heal it. And the Southern governors are beginning to realize that no matter how lazy they are, by not trying to explore and exploit the wealth in their space, this decision to side with restructuring through fiscal federalism, devolution of powers, and the likes is a moment that must be attended.
Yeah,
so I think I support the resolution of that meeting, yes.
And almost all the elements of the communique, you would expect that this would be passed forward to the central, and you expect something will be done about it. Do you think it is a gathering that the central will respect in terms of the decisions taken at that particular meeting?
This might interest you and perhaps excite you. I haven't lost faith in the fact that Mr. President loves Nigeria.
Okay.
Where I have a problem is how he approaches it. And I think that if this is pushed effectively, since we have an administration that's more reactive than proactive, maybe the tendency is for them to say, okay, if the Southern governors have come up with this, we should look at it. But I do sincerely believe that those who are around Mr. President must begin to think about our country now.
Okay.
We must downplay partisanship. We must remove from the APC-PDP dichotomies and think about the ordinary people. And that's the present challenge. And if we do so, we will understand that tied to restructuring, tied to true fiscal federalism, tied to devolution of power and the likes, is the return of the pyramids of granite. Is the return of the textiles and the textile industries in the north. Is the return of the trades in hides and skin. Is the return of jobs in the north. So if they truly love their people, they should side with it. We must understand that tied to it is the return of the cocoa silos and the monstrous wealth that cocoa gives the Southwest. We must understand that tied to it is the return of the coal plants and everything, palm fruit, palm plantations, rubber plantations, the timber plantations that the old Midwest, Southeast, and the South-South region was rich with. You know, that when we look at these fundamentals, if we truly want to grow Nigeria beyond oil, if we truly want to diversify, the shortcut to it is restructuring, devolution of power, and true fiscal federalism.
I want to beg to look beyond the issue of restructuring, fiscal federalism, and all the beautiful things you have said. I want to look and focus on the main issues at hand and the problem which is on ground today. Now, we're talking about Southern governors who, in their respective states, have a lot of issues and challenges which they have not risen, to the other to addressing these issues. The issue of security. And then they're coming and they're having a sit-down discussion and expecting what? They have the power in their respective capacities to ensure that lives and properties in their states are well protected. Not to forget also the issue of the security votes, which ideally, if they are patriotic enough, can use these funds to protect the citizens. Now, the Land Use Act has also put power or domiciled control of lands in the state into the state government, not in the federal government. So technically, these state governors have the power to say, okay, look, we want to curb the issues of the negative effects which the economy has had to play. We want to give out some land grants to young Nigerians or citizens of their state to engage in whatever SME business it is, viable business, and then the state in return probably will give out loans and then finance these loans, and then, of course, with an interest rate. But we have not seen any of this. Rather, we are seeing them still talking about owing salaries to civil servants. Some of them are erecting structures here and there. Some of them still have a lot of questionable issues that they're going about with. But yet, the only thing we hear from them is the issue of restructuring. They are all concerned about having 100% power and control of the resources without yet being accountable for the little they have.
Ishoma, interestingly, I've heard and addressed this several times, and I'm going to do that again, and I hope that our listeners understand where I'm coming from. First, Ishoma, so that the listeners will understand, the governors are not the chief security officers of their states. It's our mantra. No governor controls the commissioner of police. The IG from Abuja, that's the truth. Yes, we all do, too many names in this country. Like I told somebody yesterday, there's a beautiful thing that the God who controls the human pilgrimage does. you see there's a difference. There's a tiny difference, maybe just in the sound or the T, the difference between chief and thief. You know, they're very close, you know, they sound alike. That's exactly what we have. The people call them the chief security officer, but don't forget that a governor at some point was abducted at the orders of the police. Don't forget that another governor at some point was denied access to his government house through another route. I'm talking about Ngige. I'm talking about Rotimi Amechi. Don't forget that when we understand that with the evolution of power, with true federalism will come some level of state policing and community policing. That's on the one hand. Then on the second hand,
Do you need restructuring for that?
Yeah, restructuring comes.
But then Governor Ayefayoshe has been able to address the herdsmen issues in his state. And technically, he may not be the chief security officer.
The conflict.
True or false?
But by constitution, they have
the conflict that he had to resolve after that, most people do not understand. Because the Hausa community, you remember what happened? It was actually resolved by the Hausa community and the traditional community. The issue is, do we need jackboot?
But the issue is,
but he's still told them, go and talk to your guys to stop killing people.
I repudiate any act of lawlessness. I repudiate acts that do not...
That's not lawlessness, Prof.
No.
Every governor,
I know that there are several ways to achieve...
And they have a constitutional backing.
You can pass laws.
To
set laws to protect your place.
Yeah, exactly.
But you see what we must begin to do, Dapo. Ad hoc solutions to problems never makes.
This is not an ad hoc thing. We're talking about something that you have the constitutional right to set up.
It is an ad hoc.
How?
What we once and for all,
protection of property.
How will you protect lives and property as the number one?
I try not to pander. Just if you allow me, you have a position. Now let me tell you my position. You can't impose yours on me.
You're trying to impose yours on us.
No. I've heard yours. I've heard yours. Hear mine. When you hear mine, you will understand where I'm coming from. I think that yours is ad hoc. I do believe that the way to solve the problem is to do a rework of your constitution to allow state governors the plenitude of powers under the constitution to handle effectively these issues. I look at the community watch in Lagos. Lagos state government has effectively tried to get some powers through the laws that are available. But you know what? This will be much more far-reaching when we have devolution of power. And I remember that at some point the present Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria said that he's in support with normatives of state policing. That is what we need in this country. Effective state policing will put this.
Why do you think the Nigerian police force doesn't like state policing?
It's not the Nigerian police force. It's the Nigerian political operator.
I don't think so.
No. The Nigerian police force cannot legislate.
I have spoken.
Please, let's get it right. The Nigerian police force,
police officers.
They will love what they have now because they are in control, command. But the truth is that when the political operators allow for resource control, allow for true fiscal federalism, allow for devolution of power, they can't do anything otherwise. It is about the political operators, not about the police, Nigerian police hierarchy. Because the day you say this is what must happen, this is what should happen as postulated by law, they can't do anything otherwise. But I think that, you know, almost always, you know, my mentor Martin Luther Jr. called it the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. We want it piecemeal. Nigerians are not ready to face it right now. And I think that that's what we must begin to do. Let's throw this toga of
why is it
softly?
Yes.
Easy does it.
Yes. Why do you think Nigerians are like that? Why do you think Nigerians are like that?
Because some of us are not ready to look people in the face. Like I just told you, I don't want the ad hoc situation of Ekiti. Perhaps maybe
Lagos?
if the governor of Delta State wakes up from his slumber, he decides to create his own, and then the man in Bayelsa decides to create his own. No, I don't. That's not what we need. We need a programmatic that will allow state governors to run the security.
Professor Chris.
That's it.
No, in the interim.
Interim.
Now let's
Interim.
let's
And
look
for
at
the interim, that's what you call ad hoc.
that's what you address as that is proactive.
We always want.
No, but that is proactive.
I'm 46
As
years
you
old.
and I
Is
speak,
your man, I'm 46
as
years
you and I
old. For 46,
speak,
46 years of my
Professor
life,
Chris.
one word continues to repeat. Interim. In the time being.
Professor
in the time
Chris,
being.
as
That
you and
for
I
in a few years I'll
yes.
be 50 years
Lives
old.
are in danger.
It does not matter. It does
As you and I
It doesn't
speak,
matter.
lives
Okay,
are
how
in
do
danger.
Tanzania is moving.
How do you
Not
think?
in interim.
When?
Tanzania is moving.
When
Ghana
will-
is moving.
Yes. How did they move?
Morocco is moving.
How did they move?
Because they sat down to take decisions.
yeah,
not
you
ad
know-
hoc decisions.
you know what
not
I'm
in
saying?
the interim.
Yes.
Look at now. Ghana is leading
We
the
have
world
to start from somewhere.
in
We
terms
need
of-
to start somewhere.
Oh my God.
We need to start
I'm
somewhere.
going to cry here, Dapo.
If states,
From where?
if states, okay, hold on.
Piecemeal?
Now, the
That's
Southern
not what we're
governors,
gonna do in
hold on,
2019.
Prof. Hold on, Prof. The Southern governors
Not for
came.
piecemeal.
No, it's
Start
not about
from somewhere.
No,
We
what,
started
what makes it
1960.
piecemeal? What
We
makes
started
it
from
piecemeal?
somewhere since 1960.
No, it doesn't make it piecemeal. It simply means this is the time to get it done.
So
That's what we're
let's
saying.
get it
Let's
done.
do it now.
No, let's
Yes.
get it done.
That's what they
I'm
want to
saying.
do.
Who?
That is what they are planning to do.
Which people?
If eventually
People.
this support, I'm talking about the Southern governors that came together. If you read it through the communique, they have plans in place to do some certain things. And don't forget, part of the
What stops them before?
the point is, part of the campaign promises of this administration is that state policing will be encouraged. And to a very large extent, I'm sure this has been recurring in coming up in meetings and all of that. So if really going in the direction of restructuring is what is going to institute this, why not?
Mandela would say
It has to be started.
Dapo, my brother and
has
friend.
to be
Dapo,
started.
my brother and friend. Let me say this. Mandela would say that the time is always right to do right. And I want to believe that the reason we try to inform the Nigerian people is to tell them that the urgency of now is profound, and to tell leadership that you cannot continue to take the followership and the ordinary people for granted for so long. The time in history is such that the world is watching us, and our children are getting very impatient with what is happening. I repudiate the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. I believe that the time for us to begin to look, Mr. President, and those who have prayed this so-called democracy in the face and challenge them to responsible and responsive action is now.
Prof.
I believe that
Prof,
the time,
things are changing. Things are changing. Okay, the National Assembly came up and said some roads needs to be
changing from where to
hold on, that some government roads, some federal government roads, to be given back to the state government because
Some.
it's becoming obvious.
Some.
Roads,
Where
yes.
does-
all
where
of
in the
them.
world?
Let
Where
it be
in
done
the world?
gradually.
No.
Let it be done. It can be done gradually, Prof.
But no, this is not fair. This is not fair to posterity and fair to our children. Why have you bought into it?
I'm not buying into it.
cannot
I'm
be-
just
it can
telling
be
you.
done wholesale.
How?
It
How?
was done wholesale in Ghana. I'm not mentioning the West now.
Yes.
It was done wholesale in Uganda. It was done wholesale in Tanzania. The federal government has nothing to do with roads across the country. They should be concerned about national defense, the army, the navy, and the likes, currency and coinage. They should be concerned with part of customs and excise duties and our foreign policy. We don't need a monstrous federal government that is involved in education in my hometown of Ibuzo. There's a federal government college in my hometown. The federal government is interested in who buys the newspaper and who puts computer there. It's not done anywhere. In Ijaniki, the same thing. It's not done anywhere. Jackpot, we don't need it gradually. We have been doing it gradually since 1966, and it hasn't
Professor
worked.
Chris, because
we
of our
have to
time-
insist on leadership to do what is right, trite, and proper.
Professor
And now
Chris,
is the
talked
time
about
to
the
do what
problems,
is
right?
right.
Let's start. We
let's
talked about
quickly
the
also look
problems.
at this issue here now.
The
Now
solution,
Yes.
Professor
one
Chris,
bullet, restructuring.
restructuring, beautiful.
The silver
According to
bullet.
you, no, Professor Chris, according to you, now
And
these state
also,
governors
I've
keep
researched it
complaining.
effectively, and the
This-
state governors have suddenly bought into it.
Can I?
You see,
Can I?
Okay.
These state governors have all been crying about restructuring, but we have never
No, they
seen.
just woke up.
We have
Don't use the
never
word they have
seen
been
at the
crying.
legislative floor.
They just bought
we have
into
not
it.
seen their representatives
Let
from
me
their
surprise you.
state
The
talk
Ekiti
about
state governor was
it
opposed
at
to
the
it.
House
They
of
just bought into
Assembly.
it. So many of them just bought into it.
So since
It's a
then
silver
till now,
bullet.
Okay, so we are going.
since then till
We're
now,
heading
the
somewhere.
House has
Where
sat.
would-
True or false? The House has sat. Since then till now, since the communique was entered and signed and all of that, the House of Assembly, they have sat.
Which House of Assembly? House
But
of
then reps and the Senate. But then we have not seen any of some of these senators from representing this state come out to say move a motion
We're out of time.
for
We
restructuring.
need to take props.
So don't you think this is all media
Let's take your
wash?
last. Let's take your last comment.
I try to be as concise as possible. Dagbo, the time to do right is now. The time to challenge leadership to responsible and responsive action is now. The time to begin to mobilize the Nigerian people, understanding that 2019 is just before us, is now. And the time to challenge people to believe in green again, because we are a people who are resilient. We're a people who are passionate and focused is now. I believe that if we work together as a people, I believe that if we, rather than continue to organize, if we organize as a people, we shall have a ballot-based revolution come 2019.
Okay.
When a leader who truly cares about Ufoma in Delta State, who truly cares about Ekaite in Cross River State, who truly cares about Kemi in the Southwest, who truly cares about Usman, will emerge and unite, unify, and move this country forward.
I have a question for you.
Centered
Do you,
on
do you
justice,
think this
equity, and
government
fairness.
can take us there? Can give us everything that you just said?
With everything
This
that's
government
going
is
on.
perhaps, and I say this with the greatest sense of responsibility, is a stopgap. to
Okay.
the process.
All right. It's a stopgap. Let's see what happened. It's definitely going to pan out, and we are all watching. And we're putting our faith in this entity called Nigeria, and we believe that God is going to help us, even when we come out to help ourselves.
To enjoy more of these our Ogbonge videos when you just watch, press this button to subscribe on top of our YouTube page. You go love am.